Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, man. What's going on? Long weekend.
Yeah, just kind of recuperating after this weekend. It's been a long 3 days.
Lots of
So,
White Sox stuff. Yeah, I know.
yeah, two full days of White Sox stuff. So, and there's actually some news this week. With spring training coming down here pretty shortly, we got the list of NRIs for the White Sox for spring training. So that's something fun.
I'm sure it'll be expanding.
Yeah. We're only at 63.
What did they get to last year? 80 something?
I thought
But
it
it
was like
wasn't. But I think they weren't NRIs though. They had like more players and I don't know. It was weird. They had like a ton. They just like kept adding guys.
yeah, there was like at least 75.
Yeah, it was
pretty
crazy.
insane. So I guess we could just go ahead and start with the NRIs. You just dropped a piece on FutureSox.net about the NRIs. If you are so inclined, go ahead and hop over there and read James' article that he dropped today. So the White Sox have sent invites to Dan Altavilla, Justin Dunn, and Jonathan Heasley, and
Wild thing.
they signed James Karinchak to a deal yesterday. You got thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I mean, like his brief numbers in AAA Columbus were good, but apparently he was only throwing like 92, where the reports were. So look, I think he comes to camp, and if his stuff is back, then he might be your closer. But if he's bad, like they'll just, they'll cut him or he'll be in the minors or something. And it's just I think it's worth a shot because he's always been like pretty solid. It's a lot of walks, but it's a ton of strikeouts. I think White Sox fans probably hate him, which is, I talked to some last night that were like not thrilled just because they don't feel like having to cheer for him. But, we kind of just like talk about value created ads, and this is that. It either, I don't get worked up over non-roster invites because they don't, like, minor league deals like don't really matter all that much, right? So yeah, I bet there's more coming. I think there's just probably people that are out there that were hoping for big league deals or better opportunities, and the White Sox have opportunity. That's one thing they can provide.
That is true. My thoughts on that whole thing was he hasn't been good, like the dominant Karinchak that everybody liked. Now, didn't disliked when he was with the Guardians, but the one that everybody thought was a good pitcher was during Spider Tack times.
Oh yeah.
Since that's not been a thing for years now, his command went south. His breaking balls were breaking less, and it caused, this is one of the things, and Tyler Glasnow talked about this a lot when the sticky stuff was a thing of conversation, is the pitchers have to clutch the ball harder, and that's what ends up screwing up all their muscles because they have to work that much harder to get that spin on that ball, and they have to hold it harder, which causes all sorts of problems. He had in 22, I think it was a lat strain, and then in 23, it was a shoulder problem that like limited him to like 30 innings. And then last year, he only pitched like 6 innings?
Yeah. 6 at AAA Columbus, none in the big leagues.
Yeah, it's not good.
And then he was on their 40, so they like outrighted him basically. And then he elected free agency. So yeah, there's another one today that I'm sure you were going to get to. That's another injured pitcher. Justin Dunn was an injured pitcher. Jonathan Heasley was an injured pitcher. So it seems like, I think I tweeted earlier, like the White Sox, their market inefficiency is pitchers with shoulder problems. Apparently, like it's just I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that whole thing works out. I don't really expect anything out of it.
No. He'll get cut in spring training most likely. The same thing, like Justin Dunn, like has a storied history like of shoulder issues. Like he was a 19th overall pick, what back in like 2016 or something like that. Of the Mets, he was involved in the Robinson Cano trade with Jared Kelenic. And then it was just injury after injury in Seattle. Last year he was with Cincinnati, but he rehabbed the entire season and he had like a shoulder capsule surgery or something. So my guess is his starter days are also over and he's in this pile of bullpen arms. But if he's healthy, like, I mean, Justin Dunn's stuff's always been pretty good. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he is like decent. Heasley, what doesn't throw terribly hard. Altavia does. But yeah, it's just these are names like on the pile, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, like obviously the White Sox also think that there is a market inefficiency in guys drafted in the mid 2000 teens because that DJ Snelton guy that they just signed as well was like 2016.
Yeah.
So they keep on getting these guys that are a little bit older, but he does throw 100 miles an hour, so there is that.
Well, one of the top pro scouts in your organization was their amateur scouting director in those years. So
True. Go ahead and bring this up here. Max is asking how worried Sox fans should be about the Thorpe news.
I don't know. I mean, he looked okay. The thing for me is just like I don't know. Like it's natural, right? Like when I've heard no structural damage, like I just think it's probably minor. But I mean, I don't. I mean, it's an elbow, right? Like I mean, bone spur. You go in. You either I don't know if he removed it or shaved it. And they said that it's just kind of part of the process, but it sounds like he's going to be a little bit delayed. So yeah, I mean that's not great, but it's not one of those things where you can just like preemptively give him Tommy John surgery if he doesn't have a torn UCL. You know what I mean? So they're just going to have to kind of figure it out and work through it. I mean, I was really hoping that the bone spur like had a lot to do with his struggles because he was not the guy who we were used to seeing, consistently.
Yep.
So then when he went down, I was kind of like, oh, good, that explains some of the walks. Because look, I mean, he has to obviously be ahead in the count, otherwise he's going to get murdered. But he always has been. So that was kind of weird. So yeah, I think he's part of this year's rotation. I think he's part of their next. I think Drew Thorpe is in the rotation the next time the White Sox are good. I just this might get Sean Burke his rotation spot with the two veterans, like in Perez and Bryce Wilson might be in the rotation too.
And also from Max, something that we've talked about, especially with the roster log jam that's coming here at catcher. How much longer does Adam Hackenberg have in the org with all the catching depth?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that they'll necessarily like cut him, but he's definitely not a priority. I mean, Michael Turner, like you're basically asking Michael Turner to go back to Double A again because I mean Teal and Caro are both in Charlotte. You have Omar Narvaez on a minor league deal. So yeah, I mean, look, if they just like got rid of Hackenberg, like I wouldn't be terribly surprised. But I mean, he could also split Double A with Turner, and it would be fine too.
Yeah, I would just have to wait and see what happens with Narvaez, because that's
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they cut him out of spring training.
Well, but I think the thing they have to look at too is like Teal and Caro are both playing in the big leagues at some point this season, right? So then do you want to have nothing in like do you just hand that job to Michael Turner at that point, or are you just like, okay, Hackenberg's in the org, like move him back there, or you have Narvaez still, or what, you know what I mean? So, it's not like I don't know who, that's a debate for a later time, like who races to the majors first between Caro and Teal, but I mean, I think we're going to see both of them.
All right, so I'm going to continue. We'll get to some of these more recent questions here in a minute.
Yeah.
I
I think
think
I actually do think, I think the position players are a little bit interesting.
no, yeah, for
the
sure.
NRIs.
I think it's the bullpen stuff's not really all that interesting, but like basically any position players, I'm all ears on those ones. Those ones are I find very interesting. The White Sox have Bobby Dahlbeck, Andre Lipschitz, and Cal Mitchell, and outfielder Nick Maton that are going to be at spring training. That are new deals for the White Sox. So Do you have any thoughts on any of those guys at all?
Yeah, I mean, so like writing it up, like, I mean, Cal Mitchell was really highly regarded out of high school. He's 25 now, I believe. He was awful with Pittsburgh, but he was pretty good last year at AAA for San Diego. Now, we talked about this weekend in person together, like the inflated PCL environment, right? That a lot of these guys play in, which might be true, and he might be nothing, or he might have figured something out, and Ryan Fuller saw it, and you know what I mean? Like, and we maybe have something here. So I just, I think those guys are more interesting than, like Danny Mendick, guys that they would typically, because even like Bobby Dahlbeck, like a couple of things here and there. I mean, if you get a corner guy that's like potentially like a 110 to 120 WRC plus, like guy with power, like against lefties, like, I mean, that's, you know, really. So I kind of like these upside swings. I didn't know much about Andre Lipschitz other than like he hit 25 homers in the in the PCL last year. Um, and then Maton is like a pretty good defender, right? Like I was surprised that he hit 16 homers with Norfolk. Um, and so Ryan Fuller obviously knows him a little bit. So it's those four position players, and then Omar Narvaez obviously on the positional side. And the one thing I really didn't highlight in the article for the positional side was what I did for the pitching side. I think people get confused sometimes, like when they see the non-roster invites and they think like, oh, some of these guys aren't here. So anybody on the 40 is obviously also in camp, right? So those five position players are competing with, in theory, Oscar Colas and, your, Zach DeLoaches and some of those guys that are on the 40 man still. So it's just a big battle for a couple of bench spots and opportunities at Charlotte.
Yeah, I would say also personally that the Nick Maton thing, I would think that that kind of puts Corey Julks on notice as well. I mean, he already got DFA'd, and I'm pretty sure that I'm looking at it right now, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty close in age. Yeah, they're both 27, or maybe Julks is 28.
Yeah.
So
Well, and Maton has 500 big league plate appearances, I believe, in Philly and Detroit. And it's not great, but he's a local guy, local, I guess, like Glenwood, which is really far downstate. But he's an Illinois guy.
well, I mean, they do like that. That is
They
one of their
seem
favorite
to.
things to do as of late. Um, go ahead and Vince asks if looking back at it, and this is going to be a little bit of a conversation here, but he's asking if the return on Cease was light.
Um. So yes, but I just kind of like I believe them when they say that like I remember those talks at the time, and I had kind of heard like nothing was close, and then I heard, oh man, like offers have really started coming in, and they jumped on that one. I remember when Bannister recently was on that Baseball Isn't Boring pod, and he said we didn't get anything close to an offer like this, like with position players for Dylan Cease last year about the Boston deal that they actually made, right? So if the White Sox keep Cease into the season and he pitches pretty good, like, could they have done better? Yeah, probably. But I understand them like being scared to hold him and jumping on Thorpe and Iriarte. Like I thought that return was fine. I think what happened to Thorpe this year is like kind of clouded it a little bit because people are
Yeah.
convinced that he's, like a throws his fastball at 90 miles an hour and isn't very good. Like, I think Drew Thorpe's pretty good. I think there's a lot of stuff out there about Jairo Iriarte and how they're trying to amplify him and get him back to being the guy that they traded for because I guess they weren't expecting the loss of velocity there either. But I mean, even if Drew Thorpe's in your rotation long term and Jairo Iriarte is a dominant bullpen guy, I mean, the return's okay for 2 years of Cease, I think.
Yeah, that was always my thought as well. I think that obviously that injury plays a big part, and like the number one thing that I hear when Drew Thorpe gets brought up, he's never going to succeed in Major League Baseball throwing only 91, and I'm
Right.
like, okay, we'll see, But I mean, through the minor leagues, being minor league pitcher of the year, he seemed to do okay. So I will trust his track record on what happened previously. before he had the bone spur in his elbow. Just
Yeah, I
my
mean,
thought.
he pitches very similarly to like peak White Sox Lucas Giolito. Obviously, like peak prospect Lucas Giolito was throwing 99, but he's like never done that, like in the majors. And as a changeup heavy man, like he's a changeup guy. And ideally, you have two lefty aces at the top of your rotation and some other guys too. Where if Drew Thorpe's your number 4 starter, like it's pretty good.
Yeah, I want to bring this up here. Just thoughts on the Chris Rodriguez signing here before we move to the guys that are
Yeah.
on in the White Sox system.
Have you watched him much? So I didn't know much about him. I know he throws hard. I know like Angel prospects were weird. He was one of the ones that they always really liked. And again, he's been hurt a ton. I thought it was a shoulder. Angels follower kind of responded to the FutureSox account and said it was mostly a back injury, but he thought his stuff was really good. I will say, like the Angels to White Sox pipeline is strong. Like there's a lot of people in the White Sox org that probably know Chris Rodriguez very well. Matt Wise is the pitching coach. Drew Brutera was the catching coach. And then obviously Tony La Russa and Gene Watson were both in that org at the time. And when the Angels finally gave up on Chris Rodriguez, the team that picked him up was the Diamondbacks when Josh Barfield was still there. So, I just think there's a lot of people that know him. I don't know that we haven't seen anything on that move. So I don't know that it's like it might not even be an NRI. It might just be like a minor league signing.
Yeah, completely possible. Yeah, I don't really know too much about him other than, just looking quickly at stats and whatever. So Alec brings up that he'd rather see Ramos and Colson at shortstop and third to begin the year instead of Jacob Amaya striking out. Well, you don't have to worry about Jacob Amaya because he's no longer here.
Yeah, Jacob
So
Amaya is gone.
he is gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Brian Ramos is like an interesting thing for me because I don't know what they think of him, and there's multiple guys that can play third now, so we'll see. I mean, they thought enough of him to bring him to SoxFest Live, so they like him, but they're also gonna try to shove Miguel Vargas down our throats, and they signed Josh Rojas, so we'll see.
Yeah, I find that one to be interesting. Like they've been waiting for Brian Ramos to take a step, and then they like kind of reel him back in after he starts to show that maybe he's making a little bit of progress in with the White Sox. But hey,
Yeah, I
we'll
mean,
see.
the thing I was thinking about today is like, I would love if they had somebody to like spell Benintendi against lefties. The problem is I feel like Vargas is a head case, but like I wish he could be like the left fielder maybe like against lefties. And then you could say because I do think like Benintendi, if used properly, might be okay, and they might be able to trade him for something because he was really good in the second half. But I feel like letting him play every day, yeah, obviously like weakens him like a little bit. But if you faced him, like like if you told me that Benintendi OPS 800 this year, like against right-handed pitching, like I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I think playing him every day, like kind of like shows some of his deficiencies, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna go straight platoon in right field with, with Slater and Talkman probably, like unless Robert got traded. So yeah, so we'll see there. But yeah, I'm wondering like if they try to get some outfield utility out of a Vargas or Ramos or somebody else.
So Alec mentioned something to me over the weekend here, and I didn't notice it, but apparently, did you happen to hear anything about this? The comedian kind of walked all over Brian Ramos and his English on stage.
Yeah, so I heard some of it when we came in. Because that was Saturday night. That was last night. He was I don't know, I didn't really I mean, he brought up his English. It was kind of weird. Yeah, but I mean, he like just learned how to speak English. So,
Yeah, that's my thought as well. It's like it just I don't know. It seems like
cuz Brian Ramos was talking about how he grew up in Cuba and he didn't like how cold it was. Basically, he like made some comment about that. Yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah.
I grew up here and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's not great.
So moving along to the guys from the White Sox system that are going to spring training. Mason Adams, who we brought up last week, Eric Adler, Peyton Paulette, and Grant Taylor, all of whom we brought up last week as guys that were possibly going to end up at spring training. Here they are. Any thoughts?
Well, it's like all of their top prospects that aren't on the 40 man. So, you know, I guess I don't want to say that I'm surprised by Braden Montgomery, but that's the one where it's like, oh, that's interesting. But I don't know what you think. You and I haven't talked about this. Like, Braden Montgomery is like pretty polished, man. Like, if that dude is good at baseball, like he's gonna be like one of the stars of the team and like one of the guys that's talking a lot. I mean, that panel last night was interesting with some of those guys. They're all guys that have won before. They're all like high character guys. Like they all spoke very well. And, so he'll go to big league camp for a little bit. I mean, obviously like Grant Taylor is like not making the big league team. That's just go get a look by White Sox instructors for a couple of weeks. And then those guys basically get sent down, like the prospect guys. But I do think there are a few, obviously, like, Trey McGough. It's McGough, right? Or is it McGuff?
Magoo.
I always want to say McGuff, but it's not.
I always want to say Magoo just because of
it's
Mr.
like
Magoo, but it's
Ryan
not.
McGuffey. I'm like, oh man, it's Trey McGough. Yeah, so Trey McGough, Eric Adler, Peyton Paulette, like we could see those guys whenever. Like I don't think they would break with the team or anything, but I mean with relievers, like there's no reason to leave relievers down. Like those guys are going to be up. I think we see Mason Adams at some point. Noah Schultz and Hagen were big focal points of the weekend. We're not going to see them soon, but I mean, the general manager has said it won't be too long because it's not going to be, and I think maybe a little bit of a broader like Noah Schultz discussion if you want to have one for a couple minutes just on what that potentially looks like. Cause I kind of feel like I know what they're going to do.
Well, one thing that we probably know is that he's not good at basketball because he hasn't played it since he was 6.
Yeah.
He did let that one out of the bag.
He did say that he did not like basketball. I mean, the thing with Noah Schultz is like they have to be really careful. And we saw in the Sox machine piece, whatever, like Zaleski said 110 to 115 innings. Like I don't think that's enough personally, but if he's making 5-inning starts and you've kind of decided that you want 70 of those for sure in the minors, right? You got to send him to Birmingham. They don't have a choice. Like they almost have to slow play it because I feel like if you send him to Charlotte and he's awesome, the entire, and not that like they're going to get influenced like by the media and the fans, but we know exactly what's going to happen. Like if he goes to Charlotte with a 1 ERA, everybody's like, hey, why isn't this Noah Schultz guy up? Like, especially if they're not as horrible as last year. You know what I mean? That's what it will turn into. So I think he goes to Birmingham. I think he makes however many starts they deem necessary. They'll really pump up like his promotion to Charlotte. They'll get him some time there, and then he finishes the year in the big leagues. And he's in your 2026 rotation. And I think Hagen Smith is probably similar, but he's a level behind.
Uncle Ted is not a fan of Schultz being in the minor leagues.
I know he thinks he's going to get hurt down there, but
well, if he gets hurt, it's going to happen in either place, and I'd rather him make sure that he can make it into the 5th or 6th inning.
Yeah, he's got to start going deeper in games. That's
Yeah, don't want to see him doing that against the Yankees and stuff like that. Trying to go through past the 4th inning against a lineup like that just doesn't make sense to me.
Vince asked me too what podcast Bannister was on. It was a while ago now. It's probably at least 6 weeks ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago.
I think it was longer than that ago.
Was it? Yeah. So it was like maybe right after the season. So Brian Bannister was on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. I'm trying to remember. It's the writer out of Boston that does it. But you'll be able to find it if you like Google it and look for it. It was pretty informative. Like Bannister's always pretty cutting edge. Like he was talking a lot about what splitters, and just how like a lot of people are going to start throwing splitters, he thinks, and there's just all sorts of training stuff. So yeah, Bannister is also, it's always kind of interesting. It was after, because it was after
December,
because it was after the deal, because he talked about the Crochet deal.
Yeah, it was mid December, 12/16.
Okay.
So yeah, I thought it was a little bit longer than that ago, but yeah, not that far. Um, let's see here. Other guys, Adam Hackenberg, Edgar Caro, Kyle Teal, as we mentioned, those guys are all going to be in spring training. Um, Ole Miss, a legend and now author, Tim Elko, will be there, along with his teammate from Ole Miss as well, Jacob Gonzalez, and Chase Mydroth, recent acquisition for the Red Sox from the Red Sox. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean Elko and what Bobby Dahlbeck in camp, like pushing Andrew Vaughn is interesting. I mean, they're all right-handed. So those are interesting. I mean, I think Chase Mydroth's really interesting because he's the guy that everybody kind of just like thinks is going to be on the big league team, and he might be, but he's not on the 40-man roster, and there's a whole bunch of infielders he's competing with. So that would be fine. Like, I'm sure he's a second base or shortstop option. I mean, you have other guys on the 40, like Brooks Baldwin, um, as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting group. I think it's good that it's a lot of prospects instead of just a whole. I mean, you go back and look at last year's NRI list, and it's like, oh my god, like they're gonna have all these guys in camp that we just like don't care about like at all, basically. So we'll see.
Yeah, I
And
was going to
Jacob
wait until.
Gonzalez is just but
Yeah,
you can't not invite him.
yeah, no, that's I think that's perfectly fine. I was going to wait until we were talking about SoxFest, but since he was just brought up, Andrew Vaughn was supposed to be at SoxFest this weekend, and
Was he couldn't get
apparently
there?
he got snowed in.
Yeah,
So he was doing what Andrew Vaughn does and letting White Sox fans down.
yeah.
Um,
You've been waiting for
so
that one. Yeah,
yeah,
been sitting on that one for 48 hours.
I have been. I had, but we had to wait, and it had to occur naturally.
Yeah.
Wolf Larson, thank you so much for the super chat, sir. When Luis Robert Jr. is traded, is the Sox future center fielder already in the system? Does Talkman slide there right after the trade? Good show, guys. Thank you so much, Wolf. We appreciate that.
My guess is so the first part of that question is no. The future center fielder is not on the team. Or in the system, in my opinion, anyways, necessarily. But yeah, I mean Talkman could play there. You could play Fletcher there, like if you wanted to. I mean, at that point, like you're getting prospects in return and you're just trying to finish the season. And then long-term center fielder becomes part of the calculus of something that you need, right? Maybe you target that in the trade. Maybe you draft that at 10, like in July. I just don't know. But yeah, they don't really have, because even like Montgomery, like I wouldn't be surprised if they let Montgomery play some center in the minors, but he's a right field profile.
Yeah, you want to keep him in right field with that cannon for an arm instead of forcing him to center field, I would think. Um, just my 2 cents. I mean, who knows? Speaking of Braden Montgomery, Corey Julks, Braden Montgomery, and Wilfred Veras have all been invited to spring training as well.
Yeah.
I was a bit surprised by the Braden Montgomery news. I did not know that. I missed the James Fegan tweet, so you were not surprised when I brought it up to you, but
Yeah, he
we
brought
had
it.
talked about
Yeah,
him not being there. So
he mentioned him. Yeah. So and then I mentioned, I think what we put out Hagen and Schultz like a couple of days prior, and then the whole beat was like, oh, they just said these guys. I'm like, yeah, I told you that 48 hours ago, guys. Keep up. But
yeah. James says he thinks Mydroth is the starting shortstop.
maybe he played a lot there. I mean, as soon as that trade was made, it was like, oh, future second baseman. But then you go and you look, and he played a ton of short at Worcester. So okay. I mean, look, they're going to be bad. So I don't care. Like that's fine if he's the shortstop. Like that's cool with me. Like if he's at short and Rojas is at second, and you use Baldwin in like a utility role, like okay.
Yeah, I would say if I had only two pieces, and it was Mydroth and Baldwin, I would put Baldwin at shortstop and Mydroth at second. But there are so many moving parts there to think about because I don't think Rojas is going anywhere. So I mean, you just have to figure this out on the go, I suppose. So that is it as far as the NRIs go.
Yeah, and then obviously, like on future shows, I'm sure we'll talk about more because I feel like they're going to keep adding people because there are a ton of free agents still. So we'll see how that goes.
Look at that.
Mm.
For the Bills.
Yeah, I hope so. So obviously, like I'm rooting for the Bills because I think those people like deserve to like have a title at some point. Like like you're like long suffering Buffalo Bills fans, like, and I'm kind of sick of the Chiefs. So
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I was hoping that the Commanders would get to go there,
woof.
but the refs had other ideas at halftime. The last 10 minutes of the first half, and completely made that game do a 90-degree angle towards the Eagles' way
Yeah,
with
and then
all
they
those personal
scored
fouls.
54 points. Is my goodness gracious.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
so you think Wilfred Varys getting an NRI indicates that they plan on starting him in Charlotte, or does it not mean anything?
I mean, I think that they probably think that he's done enough in Birmingham. I guess it matters what they, if they keep Julks, if they keep, what they do with
Right, like you have Calvin Mitchell
Matone.
now. Colas is on your 40 man. Deloach is on your 40 man. Fletcher's on your 40 man. So yeah, I was just kind of penciling him in to go back to Birmingham just because like of all those guys. But who knows? Maybe there's roster moves by then. Like Corey Julks doesn't really matter that much. Like if Colas is traded or discarded, like Deloach is in a corner and Fletcher's. I don't know. Like Fletcher might be on the big league team, but I don't really know what they want the bench to look like. So I guess I could see that.
Again, it's like one of those things where all the position battles, or competitions, if you will, everything is interesting. There's so many people going for the same positions, and I can't say that any one of them is heads and shoulders above the other one in a lot of cases. So it'll be interesting to see who they keep and why they keep them.
Yeah. I feel like we're at a stage now too where it might be like 2 to 3 moves a week where it's like, hey, the White Sox signed a guy. Hey, the White Sox signed another guy, and Getz kind of, he did the whole like, oh, the heavy lifting thing is done, but like you never know, man, when guys just are looking for minor league deals at some point. You want to go to a bad team so you can play.
Yeah, that kind of seems what Kyle Teal seems to be into. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity, So uh, that we are getting to, Max.
Yeah.
So Max brings up something that uh, I'm just going to say it. It kind of enraged me, but we'll get to that right now. The Baseball America and MLB Pipeline top 100 prospect ratings were released this week. The
Yeah.
one glaring omission from Baseball America was Edgar Caro not being on the list at all.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
Especially when you look at some of the guys that are on. It's like, I don't know. Like I don't think we're homers. Like we don't do this. You know what I mean? Like this isn't me like telling them that they're not giving Tim Elko enough love. I mean, like Edgar Caro is ranked 66 on the pipeline list, and he'll be ranked at ESPN, and he'll likely be ranked at other spots too. I mean, it's a switch hitting catcher who's 21 years old, who hit 16 homers in Double A and Triple, and might have hit 20 like if he didn't get hurt down the stretch. Who is like going to make his big league debut this year? Like,
yeah, with a 137 WRC plus or something like that.
yeah, so 139 I think across both levels of Double and Triple. Like, and he plays catcher and he switch hits. Like it, you know, like he's not top. He's not top 50. I mean, and you could argue if you like him in the top 50, like I wouldn't argue against it, but it's but he's top 100. I mean, he's in the 50 to 100. And it was weird, like listening to the Baseball America podcast with, Ben and Carlos were like, he was on both of ours. So what? That means everybody else like didn't vote for. Like I don't really understand that. So, it's a little bit puzzling. Carlos obviously knows that White Sox fans weren't thrilled because he must have saw it all over, you know. But yeah, so 5 top 100 prospects at Baseball America without Caro. And the guys are pretty similarly ranked, I think, the other guys at both publications. And then MLB Pipeline had 6 on theirs. The thing, I'm going to try to get Callis soon. I don't know what their timeline is for ranking systems, but the White Sox have the most prospect points in their system. So, they're definitely going to be a top 5 system. I don't know that that means that they're first, but that's usually how, kind of like the way we do it, right? Like you get 100 points, like Roki Sasaki, you get 100 points because he's the number 1 prospect, and you'd get 99 points for the number 2 prospect. You'd get 1 point for the number 100 prospect. Well, when you tally it all up, the White Sox had the most, like with their 6 guys. So, it's a pretty good system right now. Noah Schultz is top at both spots. He's 10 at Baseball America. He's 16 at Pipeline. And then it's kind of shifted where it's, like Hagen and Teal before Colson Montgomery in most places.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just go ahead. We'll run through Noah Schultz at 10, Montgomery at 39, Hagen Smith at 40, Kyle Teal at 52, and Braden at Montgomery at 66 in Baseball America.
Yeah.
MLB Pipeline, Noah Schultz at 16, Teal at 32, Smith at 34, Colson Montgomery at 39, 55 for Braden Montgomery, and 66 for Edgar Caro.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like Braden Montgomery, I don't know, like, do you think they're going to be the high publication on Braden Montgomery? Because I don't think it's crazy. I just understand being more conservative than that since he hasn't played. But I mean, if he's like really good, he's going to be a top 20 prospect in baseball, like soon.
The only thing that I will say is if you look at the other, so they were talking about taking him if he hadn't that he would have been a top 5 pick had he not busted his ankle in the College World Series.
And then he'd be ranked higher. Yeah, you're right.
That's exactly it. And you go ahead and you look at the guys who were drafted in the top 5, and all of them are in like in the top 20.
Yeah,
25.
Yeah,
so that's
right, because he probably leaps over Caglione and some of those guys, like if he's the 5th pick in the draft. Yeah.
My thought as well. JJ Weatherholt, possibly, I would certainly think that he'd jump over Burns. And Condon, they got him all the way down at 30. So I kind of think that, they do bump Braden up quite a bit.
And he's right in that mix. And I mean, if Hagen does what I think he's going to do, he's going to soar up too.
Yep,
who do you think?
I agree.
Who do you think Grant Taylor is the obvious like next guy in somewhere? Like after like a quick start, like who's the next White Sox top 100 prospect that's not in right now?
I would say Taylor's probably the next guy, but as Alec brings up in here, George Wolko as well.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if he starts out like a house on fire in April and May.
Yeah.
If by midseason re-rank he's in top 75.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a sneaky one too is Caleb Bonham.
Yeah, that one could be one as well
if he's good.
So Howard asked if there was any talks at SoxFest about any TV contract negotiations. I didn't hear any.
No, and I didn't talk to David Haw, so part of the Chicago Haw Sports Network. So,
and if anybody's going to know, it's going to be the Chicago Haw.
Yeah, no, I think they were trying to stay away from that. They were trying to stay away from a bunch of other stuff too, and almost got roped into some tough times.
Yeah. So we got about 15, 20 minutes left here. You want to talk about this SoxFest experience here, the SoxFest live at the Ramova?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, it was like doing a comedian and like bands and stuff isn't really the reason why I'm there, but I think this year, I think it made sense just because like the attraction is a couple guys from the 05 team and prospects, right? They're in such a holding pattern. Like, it's not like Luis Robert and Andrew Benintendi are there and people are going to like cheer them. Like they're not. Like I made a joke there, like, like I'm sure Gus Varland is a very nice guy and he pitched well, but I mean, like I asked you like when we were there, like, do you think Gus Varland ever saw himself like signing autographs at a fan convention because it's, like he's a middle reliever, like and it's these are some of the guys that were invited. So I think the format was fine, but it's not going to work like if they ever get good again. It's just not big enough. So, but I mean, I think they did. I think they did an okay job. I think Brooks Boyer and his people deserve some credit. Like I think the promos are awesome for anybody that hasn't seen. I think the Sox tweeted it out. Like, when the 2025 team's not going to be that good, like you need something to celebrate. And the fact that it's the 125th anniversary of the White Sox kind of allows you to do that. They're doing the Sunday bobblehead thing. There's a Griffey one. There's a Durham one. There's a Charles Comiskey and a Bill Veeck one. Like I think that makes a lot of sense. People love bobbleheads. People will come out for nostalgia because the team might win 55 games.
Yeah. I mean, they got to do whatever they can to try and get people out to the park this year. That much is evident, because not everybody that comes to the park is like you or I, where we're interested in seeing the young guys. Like eventually people want to see some wins, regardless of whether it's young guys or not.
Right.
Which I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we do as well, but we'd be a little bit more, willing to suffer through some sort of rebuilding, roster if we know that there's a payoff at the end.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it's not the White Sox marketing department right now. It's not an easy job. So
I have to say, I thought that they did a pretty good job leading up to SoxFest with it. And, they did that 108, marketing video for their bobbleheads and the giveaways and that stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that the guys did a good job on it. And I thought that it was done pretty well, especially considering that it was, filmed outside and
and
in
using those
negative
guys, like
8-degree weather.
everybody loves those guys. I mean, obviously Beef's been on with us, they're friends of ours. But yeah, I think it makes sense. You're using super fans essentially, like marketing your product.
I don't know if he looked like TA James, but he definitely looked about as interested as TA.
Oh yeah, he was. Tell you what, so that's another good idea though. The fact that I could pull up to the stadium, park in lot C, and get on a school bus and get a ride over there was phenomenal. Like that's a great idea for free, by the way. That's a great idea.
That was awesome. The only thing that I'd have to say that I was kind of like a little bit annoyed with is sitting there for 15 minutes.
Yeah, like waiting for everybody to fill up the
yeah,
bus.
it takes you 5 minutes to drive there. Why not just drive there? Because you just drop off 10 people, come back, and get the next ones.
Yeah. So I will say too, like obviously, like last year on the podcast, I was not the only one in town that has been tough on John Schriffen. I will say I think he deserves a lot of credit for trying. He was out at the Reggie's event, buying. I was over by the bar area where he's buying multiple drinks for fans. So he's either a good dude or he knows how to like ingratiate himself with the people. So while I don't think he was particularly great at his job last year, while acknowledging that it's not an easy gig, I mean, coming out to White Sox fan events and buying booze for people's not a bad idea, like for him. So
that's a winning strategy, I think, to at least get people to be sympathetic to your cause and realize that obviously that he's not in a he's pretty much in a lose-lose situation here. He's doing baseball for the first time with the worst team in the history of baseball, almost. I mean, winning percentage not.
Well, I think we've both argued that he's not qualified, and like he had that team. Like I don't know. I've argued that he might be able to do the job, right? But like there's minor league broadcasters in every city that would be fully capable of doing the White Sox job. So it was just it's kind of a tough gig for him, obviously.
All right, so there's two things here in the chat that the first one I brought up already, and it says that TA may lead off for the Angels in the Sox home opener. I don't think there's any shot of that happening unless he is just completely on top of his game and looks like old Tim Anderson again, but I don't see it because he's not beating out Nito.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time that he'll beat out Christian Moore either if Christian Moore's given a chance to open at second base this year, which I'm almost, because it's the Angels, it's almost a given that he's going to start the year at second base, seeing what they've done with like Nolan Chanuel and Zach Neto as well.
Yeah, I
So
mean, if he makes that team, I think he's a bench guy for sure. And Ron Washington will get him to do that, if that's what it is. So, yeah, I'd be kind of surprised if we saw TA. And then Alec brought up the Jerry. That was Jerry. Jerry
that
was
was
there.
the next one I was bringing up.
Jerry was
that,
there. We had a
that
great
was
shot
not
of
a
him.
lookalike.
No.
That was definitely Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry Reinsdorf was up in the balcony. And I spotted him right away, pointed him out to Ian. We got some photos, and I think it took a little bit for some other people to spot him. Yeah,
Shrift dog.
Yeah, Southside stand up, baby. And then there was like some sell the team chance, but it was like 20 seconds. I mean, it was but I mean, look, I don't know what he's expecting. Like people should tell him that like at the grocery store if he does his own grocery shopping, and Jerry's buying his produce like a Jewel, like people should tell him to sell the team. It's just what he deserves at this point.
No, yeah, it was definitely him, Alec. It was definitely him. I mean, I could bring it up on Twitter, but it's definitely him. I'd say just look it up. You'll see the picture and you'll be like, oh yeah, that is him. Oh boy. Christian Moore been working out with Trevor Bauer. Cool videos on YouTube.
Okay.
I mean, that's an interesting person to ally
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
In
Hopefully,
Major League Baseball.
Hopefully, they're not dating the same women. So,
double dates.
Yeah. Right. No, but so I will say there was a period where I thought things might get a little bit off the rails, and I don't know that John Schriffen expected it. So Friday night there was the panel with Chris Getz and Will Venable, and it, I don't know, people I don't think thought it was as great as past SoxFests because they didn't really take fan questions. They had handwritten questions that were pre-submitted, and Chuck Garfien kind of fed them to them, and you're getting generic answers. And then it was really like loud by the bar area, and the sound system wasn't very good. And then for Saturday, it was Stone and Schriffen, and you can look at our Twitters, but like a whole bunch of other like org guys, like Josh Barfield was up there, and Gene Watson was there, and Paul Yanish, and whatever, right? And they're just doing these generic questions. Well, then a fan like yells a question, and it almost seemed like John Schriffen's like, "Oh yeah, that is a good idea. Maybe we should take fan questions." And you could kind of see like the security like snap into action, because I don't think this man was supposed to do that, and it's just like kind of off script, So, and the questions were mostly tame. I think somebody asked about whether they could trade for Jordan Montgomery and get prospects in return, and so it wasn't too bad. But I just don't feel like he was supposed to do that. Some of these guys had a difficult time reading the room. I mean, there was like an unfortunate answer from Walker McKinven too. It was just like, all right, guys, like what are we doing here?
Yeah, I felt like the Walker McKinven thing was he doesn't know how the White Sox fans feel at this point after last season. Like,
Right.
how could he? He wasn't here, so he has no idea. But I mean, just the amount of frustration. Like he can say, "Oh, I understand your frustration." You can say that, but you haven't been around for the way that this franchise has been run over the last, forever.
Well, and the gist of that was that somebody was brought up the common talking point, yeah, it was, yeah. The guy was right over near us too, the guy that was yelling. But like the common refrain has been like, we've done this rebuild thing, the prospects, it didn't work last time, why would it work this time, right? And I think Walker McKinven was like, oh well, it did kind of work, he made the playoffs twice, right? But I mean, White Sox fans didn't sit through a rebuild for 2 playoff victories. Like they don't care. So
yeah, to me it was I kind of felt like John was kind of trying to jump on the grenade because of the sell the team chance that, like, I mean, there was only a couple that popped up, but I think that he kind of tried to redirect everybody. So he was kind of pulling an audible, and I'm just happy that it didn't like go completely sideways on him and that he wasn't getting killed.
Yeah, Stoney would have saved him. Don't make the 4th out, man. Stone's got his talking points ready.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride. I was waiting for that one to come out. I'm happy that it didn't, because that would have gotten probably some unhappy responses, I'm
Did you
sure.
catch when Gene Watson said that they have the best front office in baseball?
I did not. I did not hear that. Let's hope so.
I hope he's right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be kind of one of those things where as we go forward here, we'll see. I mean, it's talent evaluation, who they're putting in the spots to do what they need to do. How much, what kind of contracts they can get done. I mean, there's just so many different ways to look at that as even an award that could even be handed out. I mean, there's just so many different things that would qualify a front office for that. But let's hope that there's even if there are a couple of different facets, that they are the best in Major League Baseball. Let's hope.
Yeah.
So
No, I know. It was so there was that, and then obviously like the prospect panel on the last day I thought was pretty cool. Connor McKnight does a good job with that sort of stuff. So you had Paul Yanish up there, and you could tell that they're really targeting these guys who have like won before, who have baseball character and work ethic and all this other stuff. So we'll see if that carries some of these guys. But I do think, I mean, some of these guys, like if they're good, are going to be fan favorites. I think fans are really going to like Kyle Teal and Braden Montgomery. We didn't really get a chance to hear Colson Montgomery much. I mean, the pitchers are obviously going to be up. So,
well, like one of the things that Ben Badler and Carlos Collazo talked about on the BA podcast the other day was there's kind of like a for the media in general, is that there's kind of a prospect fatigue on Colson Montgomery, because he's been around for a long time. So I don't know, maybe they kind of just felt like Colson's done like enough of these things that they want to get the other guys kind of involved and like show their personalities out front a little bit more, because they've been kind of in the background while he was number one. So that's my thinking anyway.
What do you think about the idea that Baseball America could be the reason why the White Sox don't get a PPI pick if Edgar Carroll somehow won Rookie of the Year? It's crazy.
Why?
So
Baseball America, because they don't have him ranked?
Yeah. So basically, like part of the PPI, like it's weird. Like it's like a media thing. So I think he will be, because I think he'll be on the ESPN list. But they use the ESPN, the Pipeline, and the Baseball America list. You have to be on 2 of the 3 as a top 100 prospect, and then fulfill some sort of service time standard. And then if you win Rookie of the Year, your team gets a first rounder. Basically, it's like,
Could
so
you imagine?
it's like. It'd be the total White Sox, right? Edgar Carroll goes nuts
100%.
in spring training, wins Rookie of the Year, and they don't get a first rounder because he was only on the Pipeline list.
And Moises Ballesteros is number 62.
Yeah, as a DH.
Well, I mean, technically he's ranked as a catcher, but the guy's 5'6".
He's not a catcher.
He's not a catcher,
and he also
he's
can't. And he also probably can't play first base.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen
because
Andrew Vaughn
because
play
he's shorter
there.
than Andrew Vaughn is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been there his entire career. So you're going to think that Moises Ballesteros is going to be better than little Andrew Vaughn over there? Right. Absolutely not. Yeah. Totally ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. I would love to see like their formula. Like, does that mean that none of their other writers had it? I don't know. It's almost like they like forgot about him.
I had that exact same thought. I was like, man, did some of these guys just forget?
Well, there's literally like not an argument to make to leave him off. Like, this isn't some borderline case that we're like fighting for because we like him. Like, it literally doesn't. He's 66 at Pipeline.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I mean, Collazo and Badler both said that they had him on their list. I mean, granted, he was in the 90s.
Yeah,
but they had him.
Yeah, because he belongs on the 100. It's crazy.
Yeah, very aggravating. And if that ends up being the reason,
pretty funny.
send a UPS present to those
Yeah.
guys.
I think they did what they had him in the 101 to 115, I think.
Yeah, he was on the just list list, but the just miss list, which
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hear that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, then the individual pipeline lists, I don't know if we talked about those much, but obviously now like the White Sox have the two top lefty prospects in baseball, and Schultz and Smith. They have two of the 10 catchers in Caro and Teal. Montgomery did not make the shortstop list at Pipeline, but he's ranked 39 there, which means they have 10 shortstops in the top 38 that are not named Colson Montgomery. So, it's like the age of the shortstops.
Yeah.
And then Braden Montgomery obviously wasn't a top 10 outfielder either. He's ranked at 55, but he easily could be or could move up there. I think that I think is probably the most intriguing thing to me, I think, of all these lists is Pipeline having Braden Montgomery at 55 after not playing yet as a professional.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm trying to think of who the let's see. Kobe Mayo. Yes,
Yeah,
Kobe Mayo
first
being
first
ahead of
base,
Schultz.
another first baseman.
Yeah, that's
Sam Basayo, another first baseman.
yeah. I will say Basayo,
He's gonna rake though. Yeah,
he can mash a baseball, but
yeah,
yeah, that's a little suspect to me as well. Putting first baseman that.
yeah,
I mean, it's like if they don't mash,
yeah.
what good are they?
Well, I
Because
think
they can't
there's
play anywhere else.
at certain publications, there's a couple of righties above Schultz. It's Matt Painter, obviously, Jackson Jobe, and then
Andrew.
Bubba Chandler, some places too, or Andrew
Yeah.
Painter. Yeah, why did I say Matt Painter? What am I doing?
I don't know. That
Oh,
name
that's
sounds
he's
familiar,
the
but
head basketball coach at Purdue. Yeah,
ah,
Matt Painter. Yes. I don't know
gotta
why
love
that's
Matt
on my
Painter.
mind. I hate college basketball, so that's kind of weird. But yeah, Bubba
I
Chandler
also
too
do.
was a two-way star. That's in the Pirate system, and he is awesome pitching.
So Wolf brings up that he heard that somebody say that Bonner may move to center field at some point.
Okay. I mean, I heard he was really good at short and instructs, and a lot of there was like a lot of prospect types that thought he'd move to third because he's a large person.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, look, if you can play a decent short, you can play anywhere. So,
Do you want to take that question from Alec before we get out the
oh,
door here?
I suppose I don't know that anybody cares what I think, but yeah, the Bears hired Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator. I think it's a wonderful hire, mostly because he's already had two head coaching jobs and he's not going to get another one. So he could be with the Bears for a very, very long time. I don't know anything about Declan Doyle other than the fact that I am convinced that he was a villain on Archie Comics who tried to steal Veronica from Archie at some point. But no, he's a 28-year-old, one of these guys who Sean Payton trusts. So, I think Sean Payton tree guys pretty smart in general. I will say, so Joe Brady was hired by Sean Payton when Joe Brady was like super young. Joe Brady left, went to LSU, won the national title with Joe Burrow, and Sean Payton hired Declan Doyle to replace him. So, hopefully he's good. I don't know, but Ben Johnson's calling plays, so the OC doesn't really matter that much.
That guy totally double crossed Jughead and put him in the trunk of a
100%.
car.
Yeah. 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 And
I
Betty,
trust that
something
guy.
happened with Betty too, but I don't, like whatever.
So let's see here. Well, Bravo, I don't have a definite answer for you, but he did get invited to spring training. I would like to see him get a chance. I know for a fact that he will be better at defense than Andrew Vaughn. I don't know if he'll hit as well as Andrew Vaughn for an average. I would expect the power to be a little bit better. But they've also invited Bobby Dahlbeck as well to spring training. So I don't know. We'll see. I hope
Yeah.
so.
I mean, those are the guys. It's Elko. I mean, I just wish one of them was left-handed because then they could all be on the team. But, I'm sure Bobby Dahlbeck will be hitting tanks in Charlotte at some point.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I will say about Elko is that the one thing that you can't question about him is his makeup. Um, Solid guy. I don't know. We'll see. I hope so.
Yeah, and I always talk about how I'm not really a big fan of like spring training battles, but he could go to spring training and be better than Andrew Vaughn. That's wouldn't be a surprise at all.
All right, one last thing before we dip here,
I don't
at least for
know.
me. Top 30 for the teams come out on Pipeline. Do you know when that
I
when
don't.
they
I
drop
mean,
those?
my guess is this week, but I'm kind of waiting on it because I want to have Jim Callis on and talk about it. So yeah, I mean, look, the Sox had the most prospect points of anybody, so they're going to be pretty high. They're going to be in the top 5 is my guess.
My thoughts as well. So just a quick brief thing on the way out. 108 night. That was a good time. We stopped there afterwards. I just want to go ahead and thank those guys for having everybody out for the 108 night. That was a good time.
Yeah, saw a lot of friends. I talked to Sean Anderson over there. It's always a good time. Met some new people who I'd never met. Herb Lawrence was on the panel. Sounds like Herb's starting a White Sox podcast over at Just Baseball. We know those guys too, so good for him there. It's fun having Merck in the house. So yeah, those events are cool. Reggie's a good format for it. They're in the big room this time, so
Yeah, it was a
those.
good time.
Yeah, I mean,
For
even
sure.
like I said, like Brooks Boyer showed up and John Schriffen was there. So
It is true. So if any of you guys is looking for a job, we
yeah,
didn't mention it earlier, but Connor McKnight left and went to CHSN over there. So the post game and pregame show and White Sox weekly podcast host is an open position. So Uncle Ted, if you're looking,
yeah,
go ahead and hop on and take a look at the monster.com ad
yeah.
over there.
You could take phone calls after White Sox losses.
Oof. I mean, you know, I I think it would be entertaining. I really do miss the Chris Ranji days where he would just yell at people. That was
Mm-hmm.
probably one of my favorite things.
Yeah, yeah.
You got
That was
anything
good.
else?
No, all good. I don't know how. I feel like we're not going to hear from White Sox personnel again for a while. I think some NRIs will filter in. Maybe a
Yeah.
juicy low level trade or some more signings. But I don't know that we're going to hear from the decision makers again, like until spring training
Yeah,
starts.
I was gonna say probably until like until after like the first couple of days after pitchers and catchers report.
Yeah, because we have. I mean, like the spring training schedule, I think is out or gonna be out, and we have the NRIs, we have the player development staff, so I don't really expect to hear from them.
And we wait to see what their broadcast schedule is going to be like. I am very interested because one thing that Marquee did when they opened up their own network that was their network is they had all of their spring training games. So we'll see if the White Sox follow suit now that they got their own network in CHSN, even though nobody's got it, other than Antenna and DirecTV people. But we'll see. So, all right.
Right on.
Yep, I'm gonna lead us out of here. You have been watching / listening to the Future Sox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find this podcast along with all of our written content at futuresox.net, including James' article that dropped today on the White Sox non-roster invitees. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on X at FutureSox, and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at FutureSox, there is a link to our Patreon in our channel description and at futuresox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live, while also helping us with the World Wide Web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. You can catch him on the Au Jus with Beef Loaf tomorrow night. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening and commenting in the chat. You guys drive this whole thing. We appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out. You guys are the best. And we will talk to you guys next